This is TWiT.
Nothing's perfect, right? Is anything perfect? Come on, except the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5 was perfect, which hopefully we all can agree. Annyce, do you agree? Was the Nexus 5 a perfect phone?
I would have to say that it was very high quality.
It was.
It was a great device.
It was a great device. Anyway, so the Pixel 6 is great. It's not the Nexus 5. But listen, there have been some complaints, some frustrations. We've talked a lot on the show about the frustrations around the fingerprint sensor and the fingerprint scanner in the display. Some people have complained about a screen flicker issue, but don't worry, that's going to be addressed in the December security update. So that's good. Google's been very responsive to some of these complaints. But now, a multitude of users, a lot of them on Reddit and other sources, were reporting Pixel 6s are ghost dialing people in your contact list. That's pretty cool. Turns out this appears to have been a Google Assistant bug as the cause of the issue. Google Assistant seems to be dialing random contacts even when the user is nowhere near the device. Users have disabled the assistant to prevent the calls from happening, which is a temporary fix. And Google has addressed this with a fix in the updated version of the Google app. So if you haven't, go install that now, unless you just want to have random phantom calls happen. But I got to tell you, not to rail on my YouTube Music Google Nest Hub problem, but like that problem is an assistant. Like, I think Assistant is the source of a lot of these kind of weird little problems. And here's another example where it's clearly mishearing something, or something is not, like it thinks it's hearing a direction to call someone and doing that when that's not happening. And that's further confirmed by Google saying that they got a fix for it. Like they found a problem with it. So things aren't perfect really, I think, with the Assistant in general. I don't know. Annyce, how do you feel about Google Assistant in general? Do you use it? Or can you live without it?
I mean, I do use it, but it's very specific cases. So it's like I'm laying in the bed and I don't want to pick up my phone. And I want to just say like, okay, call my husband on speakerphone, So yep. I do use it in that scenario. And, this bug, yes, it is bad. But, lemonade out of lemons, like maybe you're reconnecting with a long lost friend.
Nice.
There you are, friend.
It's been so long. I will guarantee that there are many people in my contact list that I do not want to call either willingly or unwillingly. So yeah.
that works for some, not for all, for sure.
Yeah.
The question that comes to mind for you, Annyce, for me, is around kind of the evolving complexity around apps, and I think Assistant is a really prime example of this. When Google launched Assistant initially, obviously there are ways in which Assistant has really improved over time immensely, But there are certain ways that, like my Google Home, when I first got my Google Home, it worked flawlessly. And now I feel like I can only point to the fact that Assistant and Google Home and the Nest Hubs and whatever, they've all like evolved on one hand, but with that evolution comes this depth of complexity that, I don't know, from a coding perspective, keeping that all those lines straight, as it were, like that just becomes a really, really big challenge. What do you think about like kind of this evolution of apps that go from useful to overly complex? And I don't know, what do you think about that? I think
it is almost so natural in software, because there's one, you develop something and it's a big hit, and then someone says, but what about X? And then you add that. And you just keep adding and adding and adding till you create this sort of Frankenstein creature. And when it comes to things like voice assistants, I feel that we have to get it right. If I think about my kids, they always talking to their devices. It's like, hey, Siri, blah, blah, blah. Like it's just very natural for them. So I think the next generation will be more into voice control and expect apps to respond to voice and then take the appropriate action. So I feel like if anyone will get it right, it will be Google. So I'm not as worried about it, but I definitely know that it's a tendency. I mean, look at some software things like maybe Jira. It may started out simple, and then someone's like, "Oh, I need a Kanban board," and it just keeps adding and adding and adding to you increase the complexity.
Yeah. I mean, well, and as a developer or a team of developers, I mean, ultimately you're creating something. And what, you know, there aren't a whole lot of creators out there that are like, I have absolutely no more ideas. This is perfect the way it is, and it's going to stay this way for years, you know, like, especially in the realm of code, like you kind of can't do that. You have to keep iterating and in order to kind of keep the energy and the attention on the app, you have to be adding new features because everybody else is.
Yeah, I mean, even simple things like think about a banking app. I want to see my balance. I want to move some money around. Okay, great. But now look at the banking apps of today. They do so many things that I wouldn't have even thought about before, right? Like, oh, take a picture of your check. Great, it's deposited. Right. Oh, do you want to send some money to someone that's not even on this bank? Sure, we've got you covered. Do you want to set up a budget system? I mean, it's like they do all these things that
you're right.
You know, a couple of years ago, it was just showed me the balance. Great. You know, it was really, and they just keep evolving, even in spaces where you might think there's no more innovation to come.
Yeah, no question. I haven't had this bug, by the way. So just because you have a Pixel 6 or 6 Pro or you're getting one, Annyce, don't worry. Your contacts list will probably be untouched. Probably.
And also, Annyce, by the time you get it, it's already been fixed. So it's
yeah. It's just an updated Google app.
And for me, that's the thing that I think is really interesting, which is that Google is being very responsive with this. You know, not that they haven't been in the past, but like this issue came up and within like less than 24 hours, Google responded and had it moved very quickly over the weekend. Yeah. So good for them.